Former Pakistani military dictator Pervez Musharraf is dead. The architect of Kargil conflict died in Dubai. As then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Nawaz Sharif signed the historic Lahore Peace Accord in February 1999.
And the Prime Minister of India, His Excellency Shri Atal Vajpayee, will sign the Lahore Declaration.
Pakistan Army under Musharraf intruded on the Kargil heights. India gave legitimacy to Pakistan's military dictator turned president in 2001. Pakistan responded with an attack on the Indian Parliament the same year. Did Pervez Musharraf actually stand for peace? That's our top focus on the show. Former military dictator and president of Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf, is dead. He passed away at the age of 79 in Dubai. The former dictator passed away after prolonged illness. He was undergoing treatment at the American hospital in Dubai. He was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease in 2018 in the UAE. General Musharraf had left for Dubai in March 2016 for treatment. He did not return to Pakistan. Many said he was exiled or in self-imposed exile in Dubai. He was declared a fugitive in the assassination of former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, and of course the Lal Masjid cleric killing. Musharraf, who ruled Pakistan from 1999 to 2008, was also found guilty of high treason and was sentenced to death in 2019 for suspending Pakistan's constitution. He declared emergency twice in Pakistan, first time when he usurped power in 1999 and then again in 2007. Pervez Musharraf was responsible not just for the Kargil War of 1999, where 530 Indian soldiers lost their lives and about 800 Pakistani soldiers were killed. He left behind dead Pakistani soldiers on Indian territory that India had to bury. After taking over power in Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, of course, was invited to India in 2001 for the Agra Peace Accord. That accord failed. And then it was on Pervez Musharraf's watch that Pakistani terrorists attacked the parliament in December 2001. Then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee responded with Operation Parakram, but Pakistani terror continued, including that major 2006 train serial blast in Mumbai in which 200 Indians lost their lives. So did Pervez Musharraf actually stand for peace between India and Pakistan? What was his 4-point formula in Kashmir all about? Joining me on this special broadcast, Lieutenant General Satish Dua, former Kashmir Co-Commander, also former Chief of Integrated Defence Staff. Sushant Sareen is a Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. And Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, former top diplomat and a keen Pakistan watcher. General Dua, I want to begin by asking you, did Pervez Musharraf actually stand for peace between India and Pakistan, or did he repeatedly stab India in the back?
Look, the general is dead, but today, since we are discussing him, you ask a child or a military officer or a soldier in India, I think General Musharraf will always be remembered for the backstabbing in Kargil. The Kargil conflict will be the high point that he will always be remembered for. Let me just take you, give me a few seconds to take you back to his background. As a younger army officer, he must have fought the 65 and 71 wars. But the 71 war, the humiliating defeat that the Pakistan army had to suffer, has had a terrible effect on the psyche of Pakistan military more than the whole nation. In 1987, now this is a lesser known fact, in 1987, Pervez Musharraf was a brigadier and he was the brigade commander in Siachen. He launched a special services group. He attacked on one of the posts at Siachen. He was a special forces officer himself. He launched a special services group SSG attack on a post at Siachen, and my battalion, amongst others, was involved in defending those repeated attacks. Even there, he was very frustrated because they could not make any headway. With these kind of things playing on his psyche, when he became the chief, he launched this intervention in Kargil. This infiltration in Kargil was done primarily to block, because those heights that they started occupying were dominating the highway from Srinagar to Ladakh.
Yes.
And that means the logistics and all other movements for Siachen Glacier was through this road. So there was an attempt to again get back at Siachen. And of course, I'm not expanding the discussion to talk about the strategic importance of Siachen.
No, I'll come to that in just a moment, sir, but you're absolutely right. It was Bana post, the Qaid-e-Azam post of Pakistan, as you very rightly point out. So that hurt him, that as the brigade commander and as a SSG officer, he lost the most important post at Kargil, in Siachen that Pakistan had. But Sushant Sareen, was his desire for peace genuine, or was it a bogey to repeatedly mislead India?
Gaurav, look, he did give a formula, but the fact of the matter is any Indian leader, political leader, who says that Musharraf was genuinely interested in peace and was a peacemaker, actually tells you how little Indian politicians know Pakistan, how utterly ignorant they are, and how utterly clueless they are. And let me give you a couple of reasons why I say this. Number one, during that so-called golden period, 2004 to 2008, while this formula was being discussed on the back channels, there were 17 major terror attacks in India, including train bombings, including bombings in markets in Bombay. All sorts of things happened. This is not the act of a peacemaker. Secondly, the moment the guy doffs his uniform, not only his army but the entire Pakistani political establishment junked that peace formula. In fact, Gaurav, let me now tell you, senior leaders from the King's Party, the then PMLQ, which was part of the government, they would travel to India, and I can tell you the names: Chaudhry Shujat Hussain, who was one of the tallest leaders of that party, and a doyen of the legal fraternity, SM Zafar. I have had personal conversations with them in New Delhi and on this peace formula while Musharraf was in power. And you know what they used to say? That this is not a workable thing. There is no consensus on it. And yet, if people in India continue to say that this would have worked, then clearly they are delusional. And one final point. My biggest objection to that formula, it was open-ended.
Yes.
The formula said that, you know, for 20 years we'll put Kashmir in the back burner, and then after 20 years we'll reopen the issue. Pakistan was under pressure of the United States and other countries at that point of time. Musharraf needed to put a best foot forward. He offered it, but there was no closure on the Kashmir issue. Now, this was a trap being set for us, and thankfully the Pakistanis sabotaged it themselves. Their
So it was a trap that was being set for us. Very rightly pointed out. But Ambassador, if I may, Mehbooba Mufti says he was perhaps the only Pakistani general who genuinely tried to address the Kashmir issue. Would you agree?
Well, I don't think so. As both General Dua and Sushant have mentioned, he was, firstly, let me say, let him rest in peace. But secondly, I must say that he was the most slippery character, totally unreliable, and he was very controversial. He was very scheming. If you see the Agra summit, what happened at that, we know that. But at the same time, it is true that after the 1999 fiasco at the Kargil War, he continued to try to build some kind of a bridges because he realized the limitations. While he wanted to pursue his power to the fullest, and that's what he tried to achieve all through his life, wanted to keep himself in power. as far as India was concerned, I mean, he's the one who has been supporting. He admitted in his book, The Chariots of Fire and all that, that these Lashkar-e-Taiba and other groups were created by Pakistan, and they were supporting, and they are the ones who attacked the parliament in India during his time.
Yes.
And we nearly went to the war the second time in 2001 once again. But in 2003, you know, the one thing, the ceasefire agreement that happened during his time is, ironically, is the one which is currently holding it out. So I think that he had some intentions, but I don't think they were the purest of intentions for the Kashmir or for resolving the Kashmir issue.
Okay.
Of course, in the four plans, it was to maintain some kind of a status quo.
That's a very interesting thing that you point out, General Dua. But senior Congress leader and member of Parliament, Shashi Tharoor, called him a force of peace between 2002 and 7. And Sushant Sareen very rightly points out that was the time when 17 major terror attacks took place on India, including the 2006 Mumbai train serial blast in which 200 Indians lost their lives. So does India, or at least our politicians, do they misread Pakistan?
No, I think I agree with Sushant Sareen when he says that this plan was doomed to fail, or if we had been naive enough to accept it. Because if you put issue, now we're talking of Kashmir, if you put an issue on back burner and say that we will look at it after 20 years, what do you think would have happened during the 20 years? When you say back burner, that means would they actually stop exporting terror? Would they stop giving material, moral and financial support to the separatists and the terrorist group that they were rearing in their backyards? I mean, I don't think that would have happened. They would have made some cosmetic changes, some big noises here and there. That is more for the international gallery. And then we would have had a problem at our hands, having accepted whatever were the other terms. So, to my mind, Kashmir was never going to be resolved by the formula that General Musharraf offered in his peace plan.
And on the contrary, you're absolutely right, sir. Sushant Sareen, on the contrary, that 4-point formula actually sought more mainstreaming of the separatists and engagement with militant groups. So what did he want? He wanted to mainstream Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Exactly, and you know, that was the real problem, because the Pakistanis were leading us up the garden path and we were walking in it, you know, as is our want. We always do this. I don't know who, you know, with all due respect to the ambassador sitting on your show and his fraternity, but somehow Indian diplomats seem to be rather naive while dealing with Pakistan, Indian politicians even more so. And the thing is, look, Gaurav, for me the basic metric is that if somebody is really invested in a peace process, even if that peace process falls apart or that peace formula falls apart, the man owns it for endlessly. Please tell me, if after 2008, when Musharraf quits his job, he's no longer the president, he's put in the dustbin of history, is there any occasion on which he owned up that formula, where he pushed for it, where in various public lectures that he was giving, he said that this is the only thing which can work, this is what I will counsel to my people and to the Indians? Did he ever do that? And if he didn't do it, then clearly that tells you that, you know, this was something which was a kind of a tactical move on their part, and the situation in Kashmir would have actually gone out of control, simply because, as we are right now witnessing, Gaurav, after the constitutional reforms in Kashmir, what we have witnessed is the kind of ecosystem which existed out there, the kind of incentivization for separatism and terrorism in Kashmir, the way that the universities, you know, legal fraternity, you name it, you know, people have been attracted out there, they have been incentivized out there. At least after the constitutional reforms, we started to break that ecosystem.
But a very powerful ecosystem that's desperately trying to come back.
That ecosystem would have been unmanageable.
Oh, you're right, sir. You're right. But Ambassador Trigoniyat, you know, Pervez Musharraf, a military dictator who threw out Nawaz Sharif, should India, you know, Sushant Sareen says, have we been naive in dealing with Pakistan? And, you know, when governments say, or when political leaders say that dialogue should be uninterrupted and uninterruptible, and when India gives legitimacy to a military dictator by accepting him as president and giving him a tri-services guard of honor, you know, when he's responsible for the death of 530 Indian soldiers, are we naive in dealing with Pakistan?
Well, Gaurav, I don't think we are naive. You have to be a realistic, and I would understand uh, Sushant's contempt for diplomacy or the peace per se in that sense. But do you think, I mean, can you wish away your neighbors? You cannot. You have to deal with them. So either you fight with them, and any fight, any war that starts, and general is here, it has to get back into the diplomacy once again. It is not something that you can just think that today we are out of diplomacy, tomorrow not. During intervening period of the war also the diplomacy continues. What is diplomacy trying to achieve? Peace? Quite. Your security of your borders.
Some things have to be enforced and imposed even on the adversary. You give a military dictator legitimacy by calling him to Agra, and then he doesn't attack on your parliament, on parliament, because those talks fail. So we don't impose costs, even diplomatic costs on Pakistan. We let them punch way above their weight, of course, before Balakot.
Can I put a question to Ambassador Trigunayat?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Sushant Sareen, sir, if you'd like to take a question from Sushant Sareen.
Yes, sure, definitely. He's my friend.
So, yes, you know, Ambassador Saab, we keep hearing this, that you can't wish away your neighbors. But is it only one neighbor who cannot wish away the other one, or does that responsibility also devolve on the other neighbor? Now, if your other neighbor is hostile, shows no sign of, reconciliation, is unreasonable, is irredentist, how do you deal with that neighbor? Do you deal with that neighbor with pusillanimity? Do you deal with that neighbor by falling for whatever, snake oil that neighbor is selling? Or do you deal with that neighbor with a position of strength? Do you fall for a trap
Ambassador, would you like to quickly respond to
setting for us?
No, I personally believe, Sushant, that you have to be strong in order to enforce diplomacy. That is absolutely, there is no denying the fact. And Pakistan understands that very well. But that this is their policy has been terrorism. And as I said in the beginning, that you cannot rely on Musharraf or any other leader for that matter, because the deep state in Pakistan thrives only on the anti-India story and the zero-sum game with India. So they will continue to use this terrorism as an instrument of their foreign policy, and we need to work on that.
Okay.
That has been significantly done in the recent past.
General Dua, you know, even when that fence was erected, or that so-called Ramzan ceasefire of 2003, that desire for peace, was it genuinely there from Musharraf, or was he under pressure from the United States to shift those divisions at the LC to the AFPAC border, and that is why the fence came up?
To my mind, there was some international pressure, because of which, if you recall, that 2003 ceasefire was initially unilateral. The offer was, Ramzan ceasefire offer was made from their side. Of course, we grabbed it because we had started the process of constructing the LC, what we colloquially call the LC fence, the anti-infiltration fence, and it helped us a great deal to be able to site and construct that fence in the manner that we wanted it. So to that extent, it suited us. But the fact of the matter remains that so many flip-flops before that, from 99, when he was the chief, till he was the president and the de facto ruler, that we have seen it is certainly some pressure and not a sudden desire for peace. That this is my view, that this ceasefire did come about.
No desire for peace from Pakistan's side or from Musharraf's side per se, but also, Sushant Sareen, the fact that there were multiple assassination attempts on Musharraf, including apparently by Jaish-e-Mohammed. He still took no action against Jaish-e-Mohammed, that he used them as a strategic arm against India.
Yeah, and this is something which he admitted in conversations with Pakistani journalists who have disclosed this publicly. That when they asked him that, despite the fact that these people, took an attempt on your life, you attacked one part of these people, but you didn't dismantle the organization. You know what Musharraf said at that point of time? He said that, even though I had ordered, my orders were not followed, number one, which tells you how the deep state in Pakistan operates. Even the army chief is at times, his orders are not followed, right? That is what the deep state is all about. So his orders were not followed. The Jaish-e-Mohammed was in a sense mothballed and kept on the side. Masood Azhar was a very obedient servant of the Pakistan ISI, so he was kept in check. Some of those guys went and joined the Taliban and some of these other groups,
Yes.
but the bulk of the Jaish-e-Mohammed stayed pretty much intact and was never molested, just as the Lashkar-e-Taiba was not molested ever during the Musharraf years or subsequently. And even now, after the FATF, we have found out that, while the Pakistanis have made a big show and dance of putting all these guys in jail, most of these guys are living in the luxury of their homes under the protection of the Pakistani state, they're living very privileged lives in their so-called house arrests, which have been declared sub-jails. And if that is the kind of punishment which is going to be meted out to internationally designated terrorists, then you know what kind of a state Pakistan is and what kind of action it is taking.
Okay. I'm also being joined by Lieutenant General Y.K. Joshi, former Army Commander, Northern Command, and a hero of the Kargil War. General Joshi, welcome on the show. General Joshi, you buried some Pakistani soldiers on the Kargil Heights. General Joshi, what can you tell us? What can you tell us about your reading of Pervez Musharraf? He was caught out in Kargil.
Well, Gaurav, during the Kargil War in the year 1999, the Pakistan Army, led by General Musharraf, tried to tell the world that the Pak Army was not involved in the intrusions that had taken place on our side of the line of control in the area of Batalik, Dras, Mashko, and Kargil, etc. And that they had no role to play in the intrusions at all. What they tried to tell the world is that this was an internal problem, of India, wherein there were some Kashmiri Mujahideens which were occupying these heights, and the Pak Army, was simply not involved in the intrusion that had taken place. While we have so much proof, which we collected during the war. But, in the endeavor to distance themselves from the intrusions that had taken place, the Pak Army, led by Musharraf, they stooped so low that they did not even accept the dead bodies of their own soldiers.
Yes.
The dead bodies of the soldiers who had died in battle fighting for their own country. Which country in the world, does that? Not accepting the dead bodies of their own soldiers. Soldiers who had died, fighting for their own country. It's a shame. But we, being the Indian Army, in the area of .4875, now known as Batra Top, we gave a decent burial to all the Pak soldiers who had died in battle there. Keeping the religious affiliation in mind, we even flew up a Maulvi to Batra Top, and there, giving due respect to the religion which they belong, we gave a decent burial to the soldiers of our enemy, of the Pak Army.
I mean, what do you say about somebody like Musharraf? General, would any general worth his salt leave his dead soldier behind? Musharraf did that. General Dua.
No, I think the way General Joshi just described, and we in the Indian Army always talk of this, give this example, as a very low thing to do. Whether it's Indian Army or any professional army, there is a great bond of brotherhood between officers and men. And it's such a low thing to do. I don't want to use some words for someone who just died, but otherwise, I think it is such a low thing to do. I mean, that the general also did not die very peacefully.
You're absolutely right. There is karma. There is karma. I mean, so many of the dead Pakistani soldiers were buried by Indian Army on the Kargil Heights, and he was responsible for so many deaths, 530 in Kargil, subsequent terror attacks that took place in India. But we will continue to talk about Pakistan's treachery. India, of course, has wisened up. Balakot, perhaps the best example of how to deal with a state sponsor of terror. Ambassador Trigunayat, General Dua and Sushant Sareen, and of course General Joshi, for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks. Pervez Musharraf is dead, but Pakistan's state-sponsored terror remains a challenge for India. That is all we have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.